Well, hello there. Good morning to all of you who are out there looking at this. Um, that escalated quickly, didn't it? I've got to remember to look at the camera up there, not at you or me. Um, and wherever you are in the world, you are probably under some sort of restriction as to what you can do, where you can go, who you can see. Um, and whether or not you can actually be in the office. Clearly, I'm not. Well, I am. I'm in my office at home. So, welcome. Here we are. As you can see, probably you can see there's absolutely nothing on the calendar here, and not likely to be for the next 2 months at least. So we thought that this week we'd try and do things a little differently. Use a live stream. It's the first time we've done it, so apologies if it goes haywire. Let me know. I think you can send me a message if the noise isn't loud enough, or just turn your computer up, I suppose. So anyway, yes, COVID-19, coronavirus. It's all there is to talk about at the moment. I've been trying to put together this week's HUB newsletter, and frankly, there's not a lot going on out there in the world. But stuff is still moving, clearly, because there are delays at the borders. I did hear of a 30-kilometre delay at the Germany-Poland border, for instance, and delays getting into Switzerland. So the logistics world is still working, and indeed some logistics people I know in the UK have been designated as frontline personnel because they are so important at this time when everything else is closed down in terms of getting stuff to the shops and getting deliveries made to homes. Of course, then, as we're self-isolating here, you get a delivery and do you pick it up? You put gloves on to pick it up with. It's a whole different world to have to get used to. And so I thought it worthwhile talking about some of the issues that have raised themselves already. And I did have a couple of questions sent to me beforehand, actually from real people. These are not made up. Although one here comes from Anonymous, I think probably a trainer. Does this COVID-19 crisis herald the death of third-party face-to-face dangerous goods training by forcing companies to use remotely delivered training for an extended period? Well, that's a good question. Clearly, people are not being able to get out to training schools. Trainers are not being able to get to facilities to conduct in-house training. And so you would think as a result, people would turn to online training. However, you may have noticed that the ADR states and ADN, actually, for inland waterways in Europe, the ADR states have set up a multilateral special agreement to delay the requirement for ADR driver training and also for DGSA training to allow existing certificates to be used while this crisis is continuing. So for them, there's no desperate need to go to online training and just hang on, because that might mean that the training schools are going to be a bit busy when we get to the other side of this crisis, assuming we do, touch wood. And personally, I'm still waiting for the results of my DGSA exam, which was a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago actually now, which delivery which may be delayed depending on whether they can get the markers together for it. Not that anybody has got me as their DGSA consultant. Well, also in the States, I had a very nice message from my dear old friend. I say dear old friend, makes it sound ancient. My dear friend, Candy Cook, at DGI Training Centre, who says, "Dear Peter, as you may know by now, the US has relaxed requirements for producing training certificates during this crisis. All classroom training has literally come to a halt. The US is, though, promoting webinar and online training." She also makes the point that this is not just a COVID-19 issue that's causing training schools to have difficulty, particularly in the US. Cargo Network Services, the division of IATA in the US for certifying cargo agents, has stopped accepting any training certificates that have not been issued from an IATA accredited school. There are approximately 4 accredited schools in the US, which is way too few to accommodate the need. So that has effectively decertified thousands of cargo agents and forwarders in the US who have paid for and completed training. So it's not just COVID-19. And I just had a comment actually online. This is how it should work. Yeah, I like this. Online training is one thing. For air transport, the online test of understanding is a little more problematic, and certainly in the days to come of competency-based training, you can't really envisage how online training will do that. So as to the question, the follow-on question from Anonymous, can third-party in-person training ever recover? Certainly for air transport, you would have to say it probably will, simply because the criteria for passing or showing yourself as competent in order to be certified does require a practical demonstration. So online will never facilitate that. I also had a question from, I hope that helps, by the way. So, and now my phone's going off. This never happens on BBC News, does it? Although this does. The other question I had was from Paul Gooch, who many of you may remember as one of the leading chemical logistics experts in Europe for many years. Thank you very much, Paul, for getting in touch. He says we are seeing some relaxation of drivers' hours regulations in order to cope with the loss of capacity caused by delays encountered at borders. I already mentioned that. I think FEC, the European Chemical Distributors Federation, has put out a lot of useful information, actually, some quite practical information about traffic delays at the borders. And Paul continues at loading and discharge points. In the context of hazmat, it's what living in Switzerland does for you, it sounds you're all American. Are we comfortable with this development, and do you feel sufficient controls are in place to maintain current safety standards? Well, I think the only thing we can say about that is we shall find out. It is an interesting question, though, if we feel that under the current crisis conditions that we can relax the long-established, well-established safety standards that are enshrined in the dangerous goods transport regulations, and we find that we're not causing accidents, will that encourage regulators or industry bodies, more likely, to go to Geneva or wherever next, and we relax that? Things have been moving now for 6-7 years, and we haven't had any accidents. How about we look at that again? And well, yeah. Certainly, there was always the thought that, you know, a 5-year periodic requalification is basically just a, you know, how long is it going to take for this thing to go wrong? It's a random number. It's a nice round number, and probably fairly sensible. And it's been accepted by industry and not questioned to any great extent. Will we see bodies going and requesting extension to those periods that are in the regulations? I don't know. I suspect that they wouldn't get much sympathy from the regulators if that was the case. But you never know. They may get fed up with it as well. Paul also had another question, which again is raises some dark thoughts. If the current disruption to supply chains continues, we may be facing some tough decisions on what products will get priority. For instance, food and medical supplies and other products in key verticals may be blocked. What does my crystal ball tell us on where this could lead? Yes, well, riots in the streets, possibly. People turning up with a shotgun to try and steal your toilet rolls. Who knows? I mean, if I was you, don't go watching any zombie movies because that might give us a view of the future. More seriously, I think the supply chain, the consumer goods supply chain is working hard and working well to keep essential products, food products, medicines and so on, moving and getting into the stores. What they're having difficulty with is adjusting the supply chains rapidly enough to accommodate changes in consumer behaviour. Personally, I haven't been out to the supermarket in about, a week and a half at least. So I can't tell you what it's like out there. Unfortunately, we can get home deliveries, although they're a bit random at the moment. I think we will be okay for that stuff, although we are planning on planting some veg just in case. Of course, that'll take a while to get built, to get to grow. So, I mean, there are other things, other questions it raises as well. Obviously, for the dangerous goods supply chain, there are consumer demand for things like road fuel has fallen. Containerized supply chain is still moving, and there's a lot of oil sloshing around, so tankers are doing well. But cruise industry's closed down virtually. I mean, there's a few ships still out there, I understand, looking for somewhere to tie up because there's a lot of these very big ships needing to put into port for an extended period, possibly. What was I saying? I've forgotten now. That is causing disruption and changes, and also, interestingly, raising employment possibilities for people in the retail industry and in logistics. And that's good. I know somebody who said we are hiring drivers as fast as we can find them, when there's long been a driver shortage, but that seems to be now extending across all sorts of verticals, which is good because there's a lot of people being laid off in other retail sectors, and people who are self-employed who can't now get out there and do their jobs. It's something that we personally are struggling with, but we shall find a way through, hopefully. But one outcome of that, of course, has been that actually we might meet our 2050 carbon decarbonisation targets by next Wednesday at this rate. Whether we will get used to living like this after the crisis is past, I doubt. It would be nice to think that it makes more people think about how they live and what their lifestyle costs the planet. Like I say, we shall see. That's about it from me for this week. If you've got any thoughts or comments on this, please let me know. and hopefully we can address them next week, if the technology still works by then. Good to see you. Stay safe and wash your hands. Bye for now.